Welcome to the Marketing Ping Pong podcast. My name is Ali,
And my name is Duncan.
and we are here today to talk about businesses we would like to own and how we would market those businesses without actually buying the business so we don't have to chase the bright, shiny objects and we can just have fun talking about the ideas.
Yes.
So, every week we try to mix it up between a super fun business and a super boring business. And this week is my turn to pick the super fun business. And I know that Duncan is coming in here with a lot of energy today. So this is going to be extra interesting because it is a topic that is near and dear to both of us. We're just going to do it, Duncan. We are going to start a pet store.
Oh, yes. I am so excited. Wanted to do a pet store, but I felt kind of like it was like a guilty pleasure business, so I
Oh
stayed away
no,
from
no,
it.
no. It's same.
Ah,
So
okay.
background, I'll give my background first, and just so they know that we're not coming into this cold of just like, oh, we like puppies and we own a pet store. So my very first job while I was in high school, when I turned 16, my very first job was at a really small local pet store. It was not an independent store. It was technically a chain, but it was really run like an independent store. It was called Your Pet Shop. And I worked there from 16 to 18. Loved it. I was one of three employees, a really small shop. And then when I moved to Virginia, I worked at a veterinarian office first, but was putting in my application to pet stores because I'm like, all right, a vet is cool. I'm learning a lot, but I really want to work at a pet store. And I did get hired at a pet store that was really, really great, very different from the pet store I had worked at before. And I worked there for maybe a year, not quite a year. When I came back to Ohio, worked for my original pet store again, and then my husband and I started a handmade business selling pet products. So I've been in this world for a long time. We used to do different shows where like exotic shows and reptile shows and bird shows, and we would take our products there. So this has been a big part of my work history and my history in general. I've always loved animals. I always loved working with animals. And my dream job in high school, when they said, what do you want to do when you grow up? I said, I want to own a pet store. And they said, that's not an option. You may manage a pet store, but you may not own a pet store for like this report we were doing. So that was always my big goal. That was always my big dream. And the interesting thing is when I first met you, Duncan, very first time we met, I got your card. I came home. I'm like, all right, I'm going to look up these people that I just met. I met several people. I'm going to look everybody up on Facebook, friend request them. I go to your page and your work history looked very, very similar to me as what my work history was. And I'm like, who is this guy? So tell everybody kind of your background in the pet world.
Sure. So, pretty varied. I kind of went down the rabbit hole, so they say. I started out kind of the normal thing. I got a job at a pet store. The first thing I did there was I actually held a sign outside the pet store. I met one of my best friends. He was also a sign holder. First time we met, he came up and took my sign and told me they had told him to do it. I later found out they did not tell him. He just wanted the better sign. Great guy. Love that guy. Anyway, moved into the pet store after a couple days because they found out I was an animal nerd and ended up working in the reptile and fish department there, which is what I really love, like snakes, fish, spiders, creepy crawlies, all that kind of stuff. And there's a natural progression that people take when they get into snakes if they take it to their logical conclusion, which is venomous snakes. That's kind of like the end all be all. You know, you want the craziest pet snake, it's going to be like a cobra or a rattlesnake or all that fun stuff. And I made my way all the way up through owning all the corn snakes, rat snakes, and keeping and breeding them actually was one of my first businesses. I bred and sold snakes to pet stores and to my friends and family, anybody that would buy a snake really, and worked my way up through that and had some larger boa constrictors, pythons, that kind of stuff, and then trained to get licensed to keep venomous snakes in the state of Florida. You need a certain amount of hours to train under somebody to actually get your license to keep venomous snakes. So I've worked with like shipments of snakes that came in from Africa in boxes, like, hundreds of black mambas that you got to like pull ticks off of and treat them with medication and stuff. And like, that's what really, gets me going, motivates me, is one day I'm going to own, a huge snake operation of some sort. I don't know what it is, just more for fun than anything. Reptile zoo. But anyway, so that's kind of my journey. But I've had various jobs. I worked at like fish store with reef tanks and had a lot of freshwater and saltwater tanks. But really, snakes are that's my thing.
So you're more the snakes or reptiles and fish.
Yep.
Definitely when I was at the pet store, my specialties were small animals, and probably fish in the early days, but definitely moved on into birds later on. The more I worked with birds, the more I just absolutely fell in love with birds. So I thought it would be interesting if we say what the craziest animal we've owned has been. What is the craziest animal that you've owned? Would you say it's the venomous snakes?
Sure. So I've never personally owned venomous snakes. So I worked with a guy that that he had a facility and he did a lot of importing and breeding himself. But I have not been in the spot where I can own them and keep them in what I would consider safe environment. So I've been around them and worked with them and become an expert in keeping them through someone else. But probably the craziest stuff that I've owned or at least been around in the same house, my roommate and I, who was my friend that stole my sign, we had our first apartment together was just full of animals. You work at a pet store, you end up just
with all the animals. Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of like all of our friends, even among our animal friends, that was like the crazy house because they'd come over and there's like a wall full of snake enclosures over here. And he was into the bugs, so he had like Goliath bird-eating tarantulas and all that kind of stuff, hissing cockroaches, all the craziness. But me personally, really, it's like the big snakes that people were impressed by the most, even though they weren't necessarily the coolest to me. Carpet pythons are really cool, 6 to 9 foot long, this big around. Those are really impressive and probably the craziest that I personally ever owned. My roommate had, again, like Goliath bird-eating tarantulas like this big. I bought him that tarantula and brought it home, literally as big as a dinner plate when you take it out, and crazy. It was a crazy apartment to live in for sure. But
no, I love it. I had similar situation, but I never had anybody that was the animal lover too, except for Tim. But like he liked certain kinds of animals. He wasn't really into the exotics and stuff. He liked more like farm animals and stuff like that. But he definitely tolerated my animal proclivities. But yeah, I would say so years ago, 20 some years ago, we used to be allowed to own rodents from Africa. And then I can't remember, I think it was monkeypox or something came through. And the rodents were a carrier for it. So they ended up banning all sales of these animals. But before they did that, I had zebra mice, spiny mice, pygmy mice. Pygmy mice were just ridiculously small. They were like popcorn. They would pop around. But probably the most exotic, craziest animal that I owned was a Gambian giant pouched rat.
Oh, yeah.
2.5 feet long, I think we measured her at with her tail. Her body, I can't even put it in the screen. It was for a rat, it was gigantic.
Yeah.
And they actually have the cheek pouches. So she would jump up on my desk and she could fly. Like, I swear she could fly. She could jump so far. She would jump up on my desk and get into, think of the bags of rice cakes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have a bag of rice cakes on my desk and she could barely squeeze her body into, the bags are this big around. She's squeezing in there and she would shove rice cake into her pouches and then squeeze back out. She was not very friendly. She was not tame. I held her every day when she was a baby from the day she was born. And she was not tame. I wish we would have gotten a male instead because she was definitely like high strung.
Yep.
So my cousins and I would sit in my bedroom and we'd all like get up on the bed so that we'd be away from her. And then somebody would have to walk to the other side of the room and they'd do one big hop and jump on a chair because they were afraid Scarlet was going to bite their toes.
Yeah, yeah.
She never did bite anybody, but we were terrified that she was going to.
I don't blame you. Those teeth are
Yes.
massive. That's like a
Huge.
huge rodent teeth in general are massive.
Yes.
And then like a giant rat, it's just like oof, some of the
She was
worst.
she
Yeah,
was beautiful though.
yeah.
And I really love rats for pets in
Me
general.
too.
I just wanted her to be like a giant version of a regular domesticated rat.
Yep.
She was not.
Yeah, she wasn't
She was
about that life.
terrifying.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
that was my craziest. I actually went and lived with my aunt and uncle, and I'm like, I can come here, but I got to bring my Gambian giant pouched rat. And they're like, what?
Yeah, yeah. They're like, excuse me. Yeah, yeah,
You're bringing
yeah.
a what kind of giant rat into our house?
Yeah, the worst. I love rats as pets too. But on the topic of like just crazy pets, the worst bite that I've ever received from anything was a rat. It's like worse. I've been bitten hundreds of times by snakes. I worked at a reptile farm, around thousands and thousands of snakes a day. Get bit, 20 times just in an afternoon changing out water dishes, and it's nothing compared to like the worst rat bite that I've ever gotten, just because it's a different animal, different teeth, just a different
Yeah, they're
experience.
very, very specific.
Yeah,
My worst bites are probably from birds.
sure.
I don't think I've ever allowed myself to get bit by a rat in that
Mm,
way. And most of the rats that I dealt with were the friendly rats. They
yeah,
weren't like, because the feeders don't tend to get handled.
yeah,
So pretty much I would just, as long as I could get the babies out from the mamas, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
handle the baby for like 20 minutes and that's it. They're done.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's super perfect pet at that point in time.
Yeah, bird bites are serious too. Like I got lucky that I never really got nailed that bad, but I've seen some pretty horrific
Mhm.
stuff with birds. Like they get under your tendon or whatever and give you a good pinch. Like I'm not a fan. I love birds. Don't get
I
me
love
wrong,
birds too. Yeah.
but like I don't think that I would personally ever own any like large parrots myself, just because I'm like I don't want. I'm not tough enough. Is really what it comes down to. Like you need like a strong personality with a lot of those birds because they have strong personalities
Yep.
themselves.
Yeah, and
But
you got to be really patient. So I
yeah,
think my worst bite was probably, I think it was like an African gray.
yeah, yeah.
I never really dealt with the big birds. Well, that's a perfect segue into opening this pet store
Let's do
because
it.
I think one of the first things we need to talk about opening a pet store is what kinds of animals are and are not in the pet store that we would own. And I
Oof.
think that's a big part of where I would go with the marketing. Because when we talk about marketing, generally like it's all fun and games, right? But when you're actually bringing live breathing living animals into the equation and trying to do what's best for the animal while also trying to create a business that is profitable, a lot of times those things tend to butt up against each other. And you and I, we've talked about this before,
Yeah.
of the ethical problems of, I could be a really, really great marketer for the pet store and be a really terrible person for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to kind of talk about. So we know of a pet store. Let's use the pet store we both know of that is for sale right now in our area.
Sure.
And I'll do a quick description of this pet store for anybody that's listening. It does have exotic animals in it. But they also probably the biggest, I would assume the biggest part of their business comes from puppy sales. They do have birds, everything from parakeets to cockatiels to green cheek conures, which are the smaller birds, all the way up to the really big macaws, cockatoos, etc. They do have a fish section, albeit small. I would consider that a small.
Yep.
The pet store I worked at in Virginia had a huge fish section, so this seems like really, really small to me.
Yep.
And then they do have reptiles as well. I would say there is a decent percentage of animals that are not for sale, which was also true of the first pet store that I worked at. Like the cats were not up for adoption.
Yep.
We had a Mina bird that was not up for adoption. We had a Uromastyx aegypticus that was not up for adoption. It's like the manager would just be like, "Ooh, I like this animal." Instead of taking it home to her apartment, she would just leave it there. So we had a mitred conure that was not for sale. Like we had a lot of the animals not for sale. And that seems true of this pet store as well, that there are a lot of animals that are not for sale and not available.
For sure.
They also do things like lemur experiences, or at least they did. I don't know if they're still doing it. And they will have cats, kittens. They have the rabbits, the guinea pigs, the hamsters, the gerbils, the whole small animal suite as well.
Absolutely.
They don't sell a lot of dog supplies. They don't sell a lot of supplies, from what I can tell. It seems like it's very animal centric, in that they perhaps expect you to go elsewhere for the more specific supplies you would need for that animal.
Yeah, I think
Am I
that
missing
the
anything?
no, no, that all sounds on point. And just from my understanding of the pet store kind of like business landscape now, it's hard to compete on the supply side of things with a lot of the larger box stores that that are here as well, and online, right? So most people are going to grab what they need online, where it's even cheaper than you can get it at the big box stores locally. So and the margins are just so much better on the animals
Yeah,
themselves.
and I would not want to compete in dog food. Like
No,
that's just a black hole to nowhere.
yeah, I
Not
mean the
high
only
profit margins, and
yeah,
it's heavy, it's bulky, it takes up a lot of space.
yeah.
Everybody has their preferred brand. You can't possibly carry all the brands unless that's really what you're focusing
Yeah,
on.
and it's so hard to like steal any kind of market share there because they're like my I don't want to switch my dog's food. He might get sick or like that's the
Mhm.
only food that'll eat and it's too much of a pain to try and switch. And like I've done a little bit of marketing in like that retail space myself for clients and it's very hard. Very
Yeah,
hard to make an offer compelling enough to get somebody to try to switch unless they're having an issue with the food that they're on now. If the
correct.
dog's having allergies or needs to switch, then they'll look for another option. But yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about if you and I were to go buy this pet store,
Yeah.
what would we no longer sell? I have a list.
You have a list?
I
Okay.
have a list. What would
um,
be on your list that I don't, things that you would not be comfortable selling if you had a pet store, as animal wise?
so this one's a little tough for me because I ran into this at my first job at the pet store, and it's actually why I got put in the fish and reptile department because I had a really hard time selling puppies. I had a hard time selling dogs to people that would come in and they would want, for example, a mom and two kids, single mom with two kids, and they would want a Labrador Retriever, and it's like this Labrador is going to get massive. It's going to need like actual training, and you are a single mom with two kids and you have a job and like you have all these responsibilities. I don't know if you're ready for this kind of dog. And it would be like pressure from the management and from the business to sell because that's what it is. It's a sales job.
It's a
That
business,
was,
yeah.
yeah, that was a sales job, and we got paid on. We had like a low hourly and a commission, so it was like it did feel a little bit more like sales than almost anything else. And puppies were like the primary thing that they sold there, and it was hard for me. It was hard selling something that I viewed more as a responsibility than like a fun kind of like happy thing, right?
Mhm.
And things that are a little bit, in my opinion, more hands off and easier to take care of, i.e., like fish tanks or reptiles or whatever. That was always like my go to. Like, look, you're looking for a pet, you've never really had one before. This is a good place to start. It's like a good starter pet. And so I understand that puppies are we probably would need to carry them because of the margins, unless we went really niche specific on something else. For
Yeah, we're gonna go
example,
there. We're gonna
okay,
go there.
cool.
All
I won't
right.
get too into it yet, but there are a couple local stores that are like very very specific.
Mhm.
It's like exotics. Like they only
Right.
sell exotics. They have reptiles, amphibians, and that's it. And all the supplies for them. You can build your just like in any other business. Like you build your community of like niche people that really like this thing.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier to have things that are better for them than the big box stores, right? Like you don't even have to really compete because the big box store is not going to carry that really niche line of
Yep.
bedding for this specific gecko. Like you're the place, they're going to come to you, and like that would be the direction that I would take it. So I probably wouldn't sell dogs, cats. I wouldn't have any lemurs or any primates at all.
No, 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 no.
I wouldn't offer any kind of experiences or anything beyond I would probably do like, I know we're talking about what I wouldn't sell, but well, all right, we'll get into that later. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Very excited. So no dogs, cats. I probably wouldn't sell large birds. I know that you're probably going to be sad. We can have our shop
No, no,
birds.
no. I love birds. I love
Yes.
parrots. And for that reason, I would not sell macaws or cockatoos.
Yep.
Potentially, maybe Amazons and grays,
Yep.
because Amazons can be a little bit more self-sustaining. They tend to be. They just kind of like to kind of sit off on their own. But macaws and cockatoos are very emotional birds with
Yep.
a lot of requirements.
Yep.
And unfortunately, and this is the other reason why I'd be okay with Amazons, is there's just a lot of boneheads that come in and say, I'm going to look like a badass. I'm going to look super cool if I walk around with this giant bird on my arm.
Yep.
And when you have, okay, it's $2,000 for the bird, let's say, it's another grand for the cage, and this is just some doofus that has $3,000 laying around,
Yep.
they're going to buy that bird. And I think it's exceedingly irresponsible to sell a bird to somebody like that.
Yep.
Birds are too smart and too sensitive to put them in situations, and too easy to really mess them up.
Yep.
Really to psychologically damage them. You
I'm
see the
100% on
cockatoos.
board.
Yeah, the cockatoos that have plucked their feathers, the macaws that have been plucking. Then people are like, oh, it's going to be really funny if I teach them bad words. And then you have a hard time rehoming them when they're tired of them.
Yep.
Once they hit sexual maturity at 5 years old and they start biting, I don't want this bird anymore.
Yep.
Now you have a hard time rehoming this bird. They're super social creatures. They end up in a dusty corner of the basement.
Yep.
Just because they don't know what to do with them. So I do think owning a bird of that size, it's too easy to lead to abuse. But then, like the Amazons, few people are like, oh man, I'm going to be awesome and have like a Red Lord Amazon. That happens less often. Amazons aren't as flashy as the cockatoos and the macaws. The grays tend to get focused in on because they want a bird that's smart and that can talk and that sort of thing. But they're not as flashy. They're not as visibly interesting as large macaws. So I think I would probably cap it at potentially Amazons and grays if we're going to have birds at all, and application process even for those.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. I really like the exclusivity that and scarcity that having some sort of training program and application process builds into that. Mariah and I thought about getting a Sphinx, a hairless cat, for a while, and the breeder that we were going to has that. They're like, they only have a certain amount of them every year. If you want one, you have to go through this training so that you know how to take care of them, and you know how much more expensive they are healthcare wise than regular cats, because you've essentially like bred this cat with health issues to make sure it doesn't have fur, right? It's like you have to be able to pay for its medical bills, and you have to know how to take care of it. I think that you could even make that a part of the sales process and still sell the larger birds.
Mm-hmm.
You have like your shop macaw, you have your shop cockatoo, you have your shop
We
all
have
these
to have a
larger
cockatoo.
parrots.
I don't want a cockatoo.
They're a little screamy. Yeah.
They're just a little too much.
Yeah,
Just
they're
a lot.
screamy.
I can handle a macaw better than a cockatoo.
They have there's the bare-eyed cockatoo that's like not quite as bad.
Yeah, some of the smaller cockatoos are not as bad.
They
But
definitely
everybody likes the Moluccans and the umbrellas and the sulfurs.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but anyway, you have your shop bird and you say like, we work with a breeder and we will only sell a macaw to you if you come to this, month-long training thing where every Friday you're there and we're going to teach you how, like, what this bird needs, and that weeds out all the assholes, right? I don't know if we have to bleep that, but it weeds out all the people that you don't want to buy this bird, and it makes it it adds value, right? Like it justifies a higher price for the bird as well. I also think it would be really cool to have a program where they get to come and be involved in the hand raising of the babies, right? So like we did that at the pet store that I worked at. We would get them in when they still looked like little butterball turkeys, and we would hand feed them to the point that they were ready to go out on the floor. And I feel like, again, we're creating this like luxury experience if we're going to keep them. Like they got to go through the application process, and they have to be willing to come and be a part of that hand feeding, hand raising process. Then they're in, right? Like they're invested. They've literally hand raised their baby macaw to some degree, and fed it and got it to the point that it's ready to come home. Like they're going to pass that bird down when they die, right? Like if they die before the bird does, like that's their child essentially at that
Right.
point.
Yeah,
So
and there's so to go deeper into the weeds of bird psychology and all
sure.
of that. There's some danger in
I
letting
thought
people.
this was a marketing podcast.
It is. We're going to get into but we got to do ethical marketing, so we
Yes.
got to
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
through these things.
Yep.
So I'm okay with them being somewhat involved in the rearing of the baby. But what tends to happen is somebody hand raises a baby bird themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That baby then looks at the person who hand raised them as mom.
Yep.
And when sexual maturity hits, it's a bloodbath.
Yep.
And it's a problem because you're continuing to cuddle with this baby bird in a way that that baby bird is no longer comfortable with
Yep.
because
Yep.
he's looking for a partner, not a mommy.
Yep.
And then it ends up bonding with your mate.
Yep.
So, like the woman hand raised it, it's her baby. And then, it turns 5 years old and it falls in love with the husband.
Great point. Great point. Yeah. And I think that the benefit really of people that know this kind of stuff, I'm a snake guy, not a bird guy. The people that know this starting a pet store is that they can build those kind of systems in that
Right.
prevent that. So yeah, I'm about it. And I do think that we could carry them. And especially if we made it like a luxury, hard to get in, only available by request kind of thing. And you'd still get to have your parrots. You'd still get to have your shop, your parrots that you want.
Yeah, I have no problem with having shop parrots, larger birds. I mean, like, I would die for a hyacinth macaw. I would just die. I would literally die. If we could have a hyacinth macaw in the store,
Sure.
that would be amazing. And it'd be a big draw, but I definitely wouldn't, be selling them in general to the public. I think those are my restrictions. I think cats, dogs, big birds. I would maybe restrict things like rabbits and guinea pigs. I don't know that I would even want to sell hamsters and gerbils and things because I don't think they make very good pets. You always sent people over to the reptiles because, oh, this is your first pet. Every time they came into our pet store, I'm like, first pet, rat. You just need a rat. You just need a rat. And I would always have one sitting on my shoulder and they'd be like, oh my gosh, rats are terrible. And so I'd pull down my little Sable. She was so sweet. And they'd pet her and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then they would get a rat. So I'd be fine with selling rats, which you're going to have for the reptiles anyhow.
Yes.
Reptile wise, I don't know enough to know whether or not there should be any restrictions there other than obviously venomous. Not a great idea for people that are not familiar.
Also illegal. So
there you go. And, up north, we were allowed to sell Burmese pythons. I don't even know if you can sell them down here. I don't think that you can own them. But up north, we were able to sell, things like that. So
sure.
Definitely, I would try to stay clear of the really super big snakes like the Burmese and the, what's the other one that gets really, really...
Reticulated pythons get massive.
Yeah.
There's a few that are in that range, right? Like I tend to consider anything that can get like 10 foot plus. It could be a serious issue if it latches onto a single, like a person by themselves that doesn't know what they're doing. And that would be kind of my limit, right? But that being said, there's red tail boas, which I think are really great.
Oh, red tail boas are fantastic.
Yeah, they make great pets, and like I've seen red tails that are pushing like 8, maybe 9 foot, like massive red tails, right? So like there's some gray area and some overlap in there, but there's like the big 5 or 6 that I would just stay away from. So
I want to talk about this niching down, and actually I love the direction you went as far as you guys looking for the hairless cat and having to go through the education process. When I have built pet shop worlds in my head, it has always centered around education, because one of the things that happened to the little tiny pet store that I worked for, we had 3 very knowledgeable people working there, me and the other 2 ladies. We dealing with the animals all the time. We took time to learn all that good stuff. Then we had I think you guys have them down here, Pet Supplies Plus. I don't know if you have.
Yes.
Yeah. So then we had a Pet Supplies Plus move into the area. Next thing you know, everybody's going to Pet Supplies Plus. They're buying hamsters, they're buying parakeets, they're buying all of these things. and then coming to us when there's a problem
Yep.
because they don't know what to do. And nobody that worked at the pet store had any clue what to do. They're like, I don't know. I think this is a female, like they had no clue what to do with the animal. And so they would come to us to get the free advice and then spend all their money at Pet Supplies Plus. And
Yep.
that really was the downfall of that pet store. It ended up being the last chain, the last link of the entire chain. All the other shops closed, but we held on for a long time because we were the only pet shop in town until Pet Supplies Plus came in. And now we've got a Petco and a Pet Supplies Plus. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yep.
So that generic, broad pet store, I don't think is a sustainable business model on an independent level. I don't think that we could buy the one here for the price that they're asking for it and not sell puppies. So I'm just going to pretend like we could do that and not sell puppies because the price they're asking, my guess is the vast majority of their money is coming through puppies.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that, but the rub there is like you could do it without puppies, but you couldn't stay local. You would have to have online business. You would have to be doing probably something that I'm not crazy about on the reptile side, which is probably like buying from a wholesale distributor and selling at a markup online. You can sell and ship. You can even do drop shipping for snakes, which is insane to me. But it's like, it's a thing. So like you would have to have some sort of online business to make up that revenue that you're not making from puppies, which is something we can talk about. It's a lot easier on the fish side of things, on the coral side of things. You can grow coral in-house, trim it and sell small pieces and ship it relatively easily. That's like a big business for sure. There's auctions that they do, like coral auctions online, really fascinating market. But again, I agree. I don't know if you could sustain, like pay for that business without doing puppies.
Right.
If it's
You could start, I think you could start your own.
Yeah.
And do it there. And build your own business model and even keep a lot of it local. I mean, you can absolutely sell online. And I think that any chance that you have to do that, especially if we start talking about really good social media marketing, et cetera, where we can get out beyond what is here local.
Yep.
I actually used to know a guy that ran a chinchilla auction website. You were talking about coral, where he sold just exotic chinchillas, crazy coloring, crazy mosaics, and just like jaw-dropping colors on these chinchillas. But he specialized. He didn't want a gray chinchilla anywhere near him. So I would go and buy the gray chinchillas and sell them as pets.
Yeah.
And then he would sell the crazy ones at the higher price.
Yeah.
So having something that is more niche down, I mean, we can encompass a lot of these things and call it an exotic pet store. I don't know. Again, I haven't been to a lot of pet stores since I've been here. And up north, it's a lot of just plain Jane vanilla type pet stores. So I really need to go to some exotic pet stores down here to understand what they consider exotic. Like, Are they going all the way to kinkajous? Or are they like, a hedgehog is exotic? Or are they not messing with mammals at all? And it's only reptile, amphibian?
Yeah, most of the like exotic stores that are around here, and there are only a couple that I can think of that I would even recommend. So it's like a very small. It's a large market with not a lot of competition around here. So I think that's like a good signal for this area. There's one that is just doing all the right things that I recommend to everybody. I've sent like 5-6 people there, and I don't even own any animals right now. I'm just like, this is the place. They ask me about snake stuff, and I'm like, go here. And most of them are like snakes, turtles and tortoises, lizards of all kinds, frogs, salamanders, that kind of stuff. That's what's considered like exotic. Most of them don't get into like the exotic kind of mammals. Those are more like small animals as opposed to exotics.
Right.
I have seen some of them
I've always seen them like sugar gliders were considered exotics. And, I've always seen them labeled as exotics. I just wasn't sure if exotic pet stores carried exotic mammals as well.
Some of them do. Like I think they're in there, but I think that there's some kind of gray area where that some of the exotic stores I've been to, they'll carry like squirrels. They'll have like a a squirrel from Japan that has like the crazy ears and like really
Mm,
crazy colors. That's like considered an exotic mammal. And sugar gliders are, they have like different color morphs and stuff. And I've seen them do skunks before at exotic
sure.
places. Like exotic usually is like things that you won't find at one of the kind of general pet stores.
Right.
And that's what they kind of dip their toes into. But the local ones around here are like reptiles, amphibians.
So would you say there's a market for other? And I have a hard time, like again, pulling ethics into it. Like nobody needs a squirrel.
Yep.
Like skunks are fine. I'm okay with skunks. I mean, they're destructive,
Yep.
but like, but nobody needs a squirrel.
Nobody
And
needs a squirrel. Yeah.
yeah, and that's again where it gets to like, yeah, you could have animals that are unique and crazy and wild. I've been to auctions where they've sold tiger cubs and bear cubs.
Yep.
Like I've been there, I've seen them. Where they've sold baby macaques, and it's kind of gross. So there are things you can do, but you shouldn't do. Um, so my vision right now for this pet store, I narrow it down to fish, reptiles, herps in general, and birds. So
Yep.
I would narrow down to that. Now, one of the things, so two things, we could go in a lot of different directions. So I want to talk about all the directions because I think all the directions are exciting. One of the things I considered is the animals that I would not be willing to sell. Why can't we have space in the store and host our own events on the weekends where we bring in specialized animals that we don't sell? So, for instance, if I don't want to sell rabbits or guinea pigs or whatever, we bring in the rabbit rescues, the guinea pig rescues, maybe for one weekend. Something like that. I feel funny about bringing in the breeders because it's a lot of just, it's hard to vet a rabbit breeder versus like vetting a dog breeder. Um, so I would maybe focus more on rescues in that regard. We could have, and then it's between the seller and the person, and they do the vetting. And then we get some kind of percentage or something. If we're not selling supplies, we need to get a percentage. If we're not selling like exclusive supplies, we could have puppy weekends where there are local breeders that are showing off, these are the litters that we have coming up, that opportunities for people to meet breeders face to face, get a feel for them, make sure that they're a good match for them, and then for the breeders to also vet whoever they've got coming through. So they get the customers, but they get to kind of vet them and put them through an application process. All the way to doing a little mini reptile show where they're bringing in all the ball python morphs and the baby bearded dragons and uromastyx and all of that,
Yep.
and having just a little show right there in the location that we charge for spots
I
for
love that.
a
Yeah.
percentage.
Yeah, I love that idea. I like any in-person event. I think is a fantastic in-person events for any business. I love. Especially in like today's day and age where things are moving more online. It's a lot easier and cheaper to get people to come to an event than it has ever been. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great idea, and I personally have gone to reptile shows, so it's like I see what I like about them and what I don't like, and I feel like we could pretty easily create something that's better.
Yep.
And
Get really good relationships with very specific breeders and resellers, people that we know, we can know, like, and trust, that we feel good recommending. Because I think a lot of these guys have the knowledge that the customer needs, but they don't really have the time and space to educate that customer. So then they're selling wholesale to the pet store, and the pet store employees don't know jack crap about what the actual needs of that animal are.
yep,
So we can facilitate bringing the people who know the most about their animals with the people who need to know how to take care of these animals and have a better educational experience with it. I mean, we bought Clary, a bearded dragon, at a reptile show, and we had a great conversation with the people, and were able to work through all of the information that I don't think we would have gotten if we bought it from a pet store,
yep,
which was why we didn't buy it from a pet store. I'm like, I don't trust that this animal isn't sick. I don't trust that this animal is going to live more than a week, because there's dead animals in their cages right in front of me. I
yep,
don't know that this animal's even going to survive. And I don't know anything about it. So if we buy it at the reptile show, we bought it from the people who bred that particular individual, and they can tell me all about it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm all about that. The flip side of that coin is that you do get people at reptile shows and shows in general that do what's called flipping, right? So they like
Sure.
buy cheap, buy low, sell high kind of people, and there's no real oversight at those shows. I mean, everybody kind of knows, right? So like when you know the breeders that are actually breeding, they'll tell you which tables to avoid based on who's doing that kind of buy low, sell high thing. And they're really just doing it as a business. They're trying to buy them as cheaply as possible, sell them as quickly as possible for the largest margin, and you can still get that same result from a breeder technically. So we would just need to vet those people, and like you said, it's like we build the relationships and we do the vetting. I think that you could even sell that as like a some sort of membership, right? So like one of the things that I've seen at pet stores, especially like with exotics, people that like exotics, they'll be looking for a specific thing. I want this kind of snake with this kind of color, or this kind of lizard with this kind of pattern. And you might be able to put them into like like the breeder circle group where it's like they get a pre-release of the list of everything that's
I
coming
love
in,
that.
right? Like I would pay to be on that list. If I was looking for a thing that I'm going to drop, we'll throw out some numbers here. Like I've spent $2,000 on a snake before, which sounds crazy to people that like have never had a snake or aren't in that world, but people will pay a lot of money for like a very specific color, very specific kind of snake, and selling that like that information as a part of your luxury offering at your pet store, I think might be kind of cool too.
Yeah. And in defense of flippers, like some of us were fine. We used to flip,
Yeah,
but
me too.
what we would usually do is I would put an ad in the paper and say, if you have unwanted pets, we'll take them.
Yeah,
And then we would find homes for them. But I was always and of course, we charged for it. We weren't a rescue, but at the same time, I was looking for the right people to match this animal. I was not just like, okay, sell whatever, whenever, whomever. I tried really, really hard to vet who I was selling them to. And there were times where we would buy the animal. We had this guy that would like flip through Amazons like it was the theory on this guy was that he had a perfect bird and that bird died and he's trying to replace that bird. So he
yeah.
keeps buying new birds trying to replace that bird. So he'd buy an Amazon for 800, sell it to us for 400, and then I'd sell him the one that I've got for 800, and then he'd want to sell that one again later on, and then he'd sell it to somebody else and then get another one and sell it to me for 400.
Yeah.
And so like I felt bad because we were enabling, but at the same time, these poor birds, they needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So we were trying to find, good matches for them.
That's kind of the dirty little secret with any animal business, right? It's like I don't have a negative connotation. I don't place that negative connotation on people that are flippers. That's like an exotics industry term that people have placed on them, and it's like
Well, I'm sure the breeders definitely don't like the flippers.
yeah,
Yes.
it carries that kind of negative energy to it, and it's thrown around mostly by the breeders. But like essentially, that's what a pet store does. You're
That's what
buying
customers,
animals
yeah.
and
So we
you're
buy low,
selling them.
sell high,
Yeah, and like all you're really doing
maximize
is
profit.
exactly yeah, and like all you're really doing, I think, with like the pet store is adding a layer of legitimacy, like with the building and the overhead, and like you're out there in front of people, so it adds a little bit of that legitimacy and credibility, right? Like your face is on it. And a lot of the show people, they'll send people to vend their booth that, again, also don't know anything about the animals. So you'll ask, and they're like, I don't know. And you're like, okay, well, that's not going to help me at all. Like,
I think that is one of the things that I think is a prerequisite. You've got to have people that know what they're talking about.
yep,
And if they don't know, they're shadowing somebody until they do.
yep,
In the off times I was put into the reptile section, I was uncomfortable there, or the fish section in the big store I worked at. Reptiles, I was fine until they brought the baby bearded dragons in. And I'm like, I don't know anything about these guys because we
sure.
didn't have them at the small shop. At the small shop, I was fine with our fish. And then they put me in, sometimes I'd have to man salt water. And I'm like, you're going to have to wait until Nick is ready because I can't help you at all. I'm not even going to bag this fish because I
Sure.
don't even know if I can do that properly. So having well-trained people, and I think this is where we're seeing retail in general, bringing it back to business because I know would love to just talk animals and animal industry. But bringing
Hmm.
it back to business, I think this is one of the things that is really killing in-person retail is the lack of any educated staff. If I want to get shoes, I want somebody to help me find the right shoe for the type of foot that I have. My feet aren't normal lady feet; they're big, wide man feet. So I need specific kinds of shoes for my feet, but I don't know what it is.
Sure.
I need somebody to help me. And when you go to the stores, it's so frustrating when nobody knows anything. They hardly even know the layout of the store that they're working in.
Yep.
So especially with something like a pet store, if you're going to have any kind of success and legitimacy, you've got to bring smart people in who actually are in the hobbies that they're representing in the different departments that they're in, which is a nice thing about having a single focus to a pet store. So you know that you're only bringing in, like, say, reptile people or
Mm.
just saltwater people or cichlid people. Like, I don't know if that's big down here, but up north, there's like cichlid shops.
Oh yeah.
They would just sell cichlids.
Yeah, we have people
I
down
would
here that
like a
are.
goldfish shop, but apparently that's not profitable enough.
No, they can be profitable. Fish stores in general.
No, goldfish.
Oh, goldfish.
I
Got
want
it.
a goldfish
Well, I
store.
mean, we could do a different episode on that, but I think if you were going to do goldfish, you'd have to do like pond store. So you'd have
I know, and I don't want a
plants,
pond store. I
and
want
you'd have.
goldfish.
All right. Well, I think that would be a cool business.
No,
And
pond store would be great,
well,
profitable, and all that. But the
you do
goldfish
like
I
pond
want look better
bills.
in aquariums.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know. You'd have to do like pond builds and stuff too. You'd have to really
yeah,
get into like that side of it, which is like
yeah.
contracting
That's
and
a
stuff.
whole business, and I think that's a great business.
Yep.
But I don't like koi. I want fish that look good in an aquarium with their fancy tails and their fancy fins and all their bright colors.
Yeah, you and your goldfish, Allie.
I
No,
love
I love goldfish. That to me is like an online brand, like Goldfish Lady. Like that's
the
I would
goldfish.
buy goldfish from Goldfish Lady that has a YouTube channel, talks about. All right, back it up though. We got to go back to our pet story
Yeah.
here. I think that we're headed in the right direction. I think specializing and niching down is the way to go. If you want to do exotics, that's great. I like the in-person events thing. I like the idea of having a show. I also like the idea of that luxury membership that I was talking about, but
I love that.
I was thinking a little bit more about it, and we could probably roll it into some sort of club, right? So there's like a local reptile club. I spoke at it one time, and I don't know what happened to me that day, but I did terribly. And they said I did a great job, but I never got invited back, so I don't think I actually did. Anyway, it was really cool. I brought cobras and stuff, so that part was awesome. But my point is,
Well,
there
you could
are
suck. You brought cobras, so it was fantastic.
yeah,
You didn't matter at that point. They got the
correct,
cobras.
yeah. It's like we don't care about this guy. Like bring the snakes out again. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah. No, it was fun, and like I'm probably blowing it out of proportion, but anyway, there are like really tight knit communities of nerds that like love this stuff. And if you can tap into that and give them like your super users or whatever a next level to come down into, I feel like that would almost be like the core of your business. I think there's, I don't know, I don't remember exactly how many people, but when I went, there were probably 15 or 20 at this reptile meeting. And if you make that a part of your pet store and make that a large part of your marketing and bring in speakers, they bring in like crocodile biologists and all these really cool people to talk to the reptile nerds, right? Like those are your people. So
Well,
if you
and
can,
I think that gives us two opportunities for. Here's the thing. There are all these nerdy little kids going to school
mm-hmm.
that don't even know that they're into reptiles and stuff, but they would be super into it if there was a place.
Yep.
If there was a place that they could go and they could learn about it, and maybe like having a school tour or something like that. And they're like, whoa, this is really fantastic. You have the opportunity to actually kind of create those fanatics
Yep.
within your local community. So you have the people that are already fanatics, but if you can show people really, really cool stuff and that they can come in and see and feel and touch and talk to somebody, and maybe there's a monthly party of some kind that they have for these fanatics, then you're going to get this younger generation and older people too that are looking for something interesting.
Yep.
People once they're like 55, like they're looking for hobbies, right? So we can turn some of these 55-year-old empty nester ladies into like snake nerds. They'd be bird people. We all know it, but
Probably. Yeah.
but if we can turn it into something where they get a sense of community, that they get reinforcement for the passion that they have, and it's not just what I was, the nerdy kid alone in my room, flipping through books and reading and reading and reading. And yeah, same. And not having anybody to talk to about. I would have killed for a community like that where we could just go in and talk animals, which is why I loved my first job. I could talk animals all day when I was at work.
Yep. Me too.
And it was almost more of an outlet. So I love the idea of the membership. Do you know Snake Discovery with the YouTube channel Snakes
Yep.
Discovery? So I really like what they're doing with their shop. It is definitely niched down into reptiles. They are breeders themselves, so they breed right there on site. They have a little bit of a zoo there, right? That you can go through and see like some exotic species that they're not selling, but then they have their stuff for sale as well. But I loved what they did for their grand opening, which was like they had a party, and they had their Patreon supporters were given a special little area that they could just hang out with them and talk with them. And that's what I kind of see is not just like, okay, you can come into the pet store and shop around, but how can we have parties and events and mixers, educational opportunities, that sort of thing. I don't know how profitable that is on its own. I feel like there's a lot of things I want to do with a pet store that have very little to do with profit, but I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's the more fun thing to do. And if you know your numbers and have the right things available for purchase, you can definitely get this to be a profitable venture.
Yeah. I feel like the right line of thinking there is that the fun things that you want to lean into and providing that really awesome customer experience for people will bring the profitability, right? I think that it's like, we always talk about facts versus feelings, but I feel like this is an instance of like giving people that feeling will get you what you want, right?
Right,
It's like you
right.
you need to lean into
You
that
just got to
feeling.
make sure that the items that we have there, like if we're selling hamsters and little hamster cages and then throwing parties and whatever, we're probably never going to be super profitable with that. We got to make sure that we have the right kinds of animals, the right kind of materials, that we're pulling in the right people that are going to drop that money to make the entire thing profitable. So it's got to be strategic. That's why I said like goldfish, you can get pretty expensive goldfish, but it's so niche, it's so difficult that to try to build that kind of thing around goldfish would be difficult. But
Yeah, but
definitely reptiles is one of those things that
yeah,
you
if you
can
expand it
build
out,
around.
and goldfish might be a little bit too niche, but if you break it out into what we're talking about,
Right.
birds, reptiles, amphibians, maybe some fish as well, I think you'll hit a lot of markets that are niche that kind of all fall under that umbrella.
Okay, so we need to have an agreement right now. If we do this, there is a minimum 200-gallon goldfish tank.
That works.
Okay. So, and I get to pick the goldfish, no ranchus,
I think
Ryukins,
I think 200 is
Aranas.
a little small.
I think so too. That's why I said minimum. I don't know how big. I mean, I'd go 900. If you agree to
Yeah,
900, I'm good with 900.
I had a tank that was again, we're talking this is a little small on the small end, but it was a 210, and it had 3 separate sections, and it was like a waterfall from one to the other. And you
Nice.
could keep like plants in one. That's kind of, I did a saltwater tank, but I did all my like algae and macroalgae in one, and then predators, and then coral. But you could do goldfish and plants to help clean the tank, and then shrimp. That's probably what I would do, because you can walk around the whole thing too, kind of like a
Oh, it'd be fantastic. And
yeah.
that's what I really would like this pet store to be too. And I liked that we had Joe, the grumpy mitred conure, and we had Ponder and Vinny,
Yep.
the ginger cat brothers, and we had Zorro, the mynah bird that would say hello,
Mm-hmm.
like home.
Yep.
And so the people came in because they were familiar with the animals. We had a 3-legged cat named Stumpy.
Nice.
And so they'd come in and say, oh, where's Stumpy? And how's Zorro today? And oh, that Joe, he's always up to something. Having some interactive animals like that on
Yep.
site, because I do feel like this pet store that we both know about has animals, but like they're not interesting. They just sit there. Like
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. I've yet to like make any kind of connection with any of the animals there. I'm not sure what's for sale half the time and what's not for sale. And
yeah. There's so with pet stores, I do like I'll go on a road trip and make sure that there's pet stores in a town before I go there, just so I can like check them out. And there seems to be this kind of spectrum where it's like kind of dark, dingy,
hmm
gross, kind of smells
hmm
bad. Not
hmm
really sure what anything is, what's for sale, what's not. Dead animals in cages. That's like nightmare scenario. And
hmm
then you have kind of at the top end, you have really niche kind of like they only do, for example, there's a local saltwater store that's like you walk in and it looks nice. There's no smell. You can't hear the water running in the tanks. There's like crown molding and accent lighting and all this crazy stuff for a pet store, right? That's like high end. They serve like a higher end market, very niche specific. And then you have all this kind of in between. And I feel like if you're going to fall anywhere in between on that spectrum, you have to have some of that like um, almost like storyteller energy. Like
Yes.
the animals have to have names. It has to kind of feel homey. You have to have that kind of like this is what pets are really like at home kind of vibe for like
Yep.
the majority of people. It's like walking into somebody's house where they also have pets for sale, right? That kind of
Mhm.
feeling, and
Yes.
bring them in and make them a part of the family.
Yeah, but clean and doesn't smell bad. And
Correct.
that's what,
Yeah.
and with us with the pet store, we had the small pet store. There were only three of us. People knew us. Oh, where's Robin? Where's Vicky today? Oh,
Yeah.
hi, Allie, you're here today. Oh, hey, Bill, it's good to see you today. It was that homey feeling, and everyone wants to go where everyone knows your name. You want to
Yep.
go where everyone knows your name, right?
Yep.
Cheers. And we had those regulars that came in that they were connected to us and they were connected to our stories were connected to their stories. We knew what they ordered. They'd walk in, just like the barmaid that knows what kind of beer you want. You're like, dozen crickets? Yep, dozen
Yep.
crickets. All right, I'll get you a dozen crickets.
Yep.
And, there was that familiarity that really created this community, not just we're selling
Yeah.
pets. And so I think
I
you're
love
right.
that. I love
And
that.
having named pets is a good part of that. That's something that they can always come in and I also feel like we talked about the macaw. I always felt like I have a whole nother business in my head where it's not like rent a pet, but it's basically like a petting zoo, but with standard what most people have as pets that you have a membership to, so that you go in and you pet the cat and then you get that out of your system because you can't have cats. Kind of like a cat cafe, but with like lots of different types of
Yeah,
animals.
like a cat cafe, but better.
Yeah. Like okay, so I have a membership in this particular parrot that's super friendly, and so I can come in and I can handle the parrot and talk to the parrot and play with the parrot, and I've been trained on that and gone through all the education, and I can feed the parrot and do all of that. But then I get to go home without a parrot.
Yep.
Like I get to go home and not have birdseed all over my house.
Yep.
People there. That's a whole nother business. But I like bringing elements of that into the pet store. So let's talk about like actual marketing. I love what Snake and all of this is, important for marketing, right? I love what Snake Discovery did. I think it was super smart, and they went backwards, right? They built up a really large YouTube following, and then opened a shop.
Yep.
So they already had customers. They already had people. Clary wants to go to, I think it's Wisconsin. Clary's like, I want to go. That's a trip I want to go on. We should drive up to Snake Discovery just so we can go and check it out. Because
Yep.
Clary, we like to watch the egg hatching
Yeah.
video from this with the baby snakes. Because I'm all about like, all right, what's the color combination going to be? I want to see the
Hmm.
patterns,
The
and
genetics. Yeah.
yeah, all the genetics, and they'll talk about like, all right, we should have 50-50. Let's see what we get. And I'm like, yes, let's see what we
Yep.
get. Like, this is going
Hmm.
to be so great. So I love that idea of it. And we talk a lot about local businesses and things you don't want to do as a local business. But I would really like to start a pet store that is a destination.
Sure.
That is a place that people will intentionally travel to. And if you have the right kinds of animals there, they will. Animal people are passionate enough that they will get in a car, they will get in a plane. I've taken goldfish from Virginia to Ohio with a little inverter in the car with the pump running to keep them alive the whole way home. Like,
Yep.
animal people will travel and they will get excited about it.
Yeah,
So
that spider that I bought for my roommate, I bought that on the other coast. I like drove to Miami to buy that spider and drove it back. So,
yeah, yeah. So I can see. I would like to see this as a place that all the hobbyists would want to come. Not so much Joe Schmo, the general public, while still having events, etc., to educate Joe Schmo, the general public. Like, the hobbyists are bankrolling us, and in the meantime, we are educating everybody else on proper animal stuff and things. You don't need a macaw, and you don't need a kinkajou. Like, just
yeah.
get a rat, you're gonna love it, and everything's gonna be great.
Yep.
That's the other thing. I would probably just sell rat. No. You don't want any of these things. You just want a rat, and that's
Yeah.
like $2 for a rat. Like, we'd go broke so fast.
Well,
Um,
you do the fancy rats. You get like the
you gotta get
Dumbo,
the
like
Dumbos and
long
the
hair,
hairless.
crazy looking.
There's
Yeah.
tailless.
Yep.
You can get
Mhm.
tailless
They
rats.
have
No,
hairless rats too. I love a good hairless rat.
and Rex rats.
Yep.
I had a Dumbo eared Rex blue blue mask. It was a
Nice.
blue mask Dumbo Rex rat. She was pretty cool
Yeah.
until she would get out and eat through all my. She was good at getting out. She'd eat through all my telephone cords.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, see, Duncan, it used to be that telephones had cords that they attached to the wall, and you
Wow.
couldn't call unless it was attached
How
and
did you
something
text
big.
people on those?
It was really difficult.
Sounds like a can on a string. Like that's what that
You're
sounds
going
like to
like
me.
222. You have to hit like the same number over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So on top of that, if we're gonna have like the coolest, most awesome animals, I'm totally with you where you mentioned too about the most niche supplies we can possibly have.
Yep.
Yeah, I want to have the 900-gallon tank. I want to have the cages that the big macaws go into. I want to have, obviously bird toys and things like that, but I want to have the kinds of supplies that they struggle to get at a Pet Supplies Plus or PetSmart or Petco or any of those places. But I think social media would be fantastic. I would do reels for this,
Sure.
because I think that for the right people, it's going to draw in. They'll travel, and we having named pets in the store, they would definitely get featured. I would do a goldfish cam, fantastic goldfish tank with a cam set up to it. I would do maybe some other animal cams too if we find something interesting. And then telling the story of the animals, like we had Stumpy and Vinny and Ponder, and like, okay, Stumpy's feeling a little whatever today, and so if you come in today, you're going to find him in the back left hand corner of the shop because he's claimed the dog beds,
Yep.
right? Like, Stumpy's claimed the dog beds. If you come in today, go give him a pet. That's where he's at. And having, obviously, I mean, it's all the same social media stuff, right? So it's the really featuring the different employees and what they love about which animals they love the most and which ones they think are the coolest. What's the
Yep.
craziest animal they've ever owned? And I would definitely interview the hobbyists, like the die hard, and get them on camera. I think they would love it. We could even do like a bring your craziest reptile in,
Yeah.
and do like a feature, and maybe even have like it's a voted thing where we can have the cutest, we could have the most, like the most, the best colors or something like that.
Yeah, they have shows like that where it's kind of like 4-H but for exotics.
Yeah.
Where they have those in other countries. They're not really a thing here, but I think that there's enough people that
Yep.
you could do it, and you would just have structured categories, and you'd have like the blue ribbon ball python or whatever, like
Yes.
this best
Yeah.
in show. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think
yeah, yeah.
that would be great. And you would just bring every reptile nerd in the area to your store. Even like
Yep,
people who travel, like you said, and you can make it a big deal where it's like sponsored by, ZooMed is one of the bigger,
sure.
reptile companies, and like they have a rep that travels, and he great guy, I know him. I've met him at like all the reptile places I've worked at. I'm like, hey, I remember you. But you partner, you do a joint venture with them where you say this thing is sponsored by ZooMed, and first place in each category gets like XYZ kit, and you make it like a huge blowout event where they got to pay to come in and do the, enter their whatever into the
I
tournament.
love that. I
Yeah,
did
that's a
definitely
great idea.
have event space,
Yep.
because I think the events would be huge. And
Yep.
what does everybody want to do? They want to show off their animal. If I've got,
Hmm.
I have more pictures of my dogs on Facebook than I have of my kids.
Yeah.
There are more pictures of my dogs on my phone than I have of my kids.
Yep.
And I want everybody to see my dogs. If I meet a stranger, we end up talking about dogs, and I'm not showing them pictures of my kids. I'm showing them pictures of my dogs. This
Yep.
is my dog. This is my baby.
Yep.
And so people that get these exotic animals, if they have them in a vacuum, it's less fun,
Yes.
right? Like they still enjoy them and they still like, but there's several YouTubers that I follow that have nothing to do with reptiles that have like their show has nothing to do with reptiles, but they've started breeding snakes and they're getting into like different corn snake morphs and all of that. And they bring them on screen because they're like, everybody look at my cool new snake. I'm talking about this subject over here, but I'm nonchalantly also wearing a snake,
Yeah.
and I want you to notice and I want you to see my snake.
Hmm.
So if we can tap into that and give them an opportunity to show off, like, because I can't, and people will do it. Like they'll show up at a reptile show with a red tail boa wrapped around their neck, but it's not really the appropriate, like, that's not what the event is
Yeah,
for.
they don't recommend it either. They
Right.
ask people not to most of the time because it's too crowded. It's not really set up for that. And there's like disease problems that you got to consider and whatever
Right.
else. But if it was meant for that, like this is this event, bring
Yep.
your premier, your best whatever. I think
Yep.
that would be a huge hit here.
We're going to judge the best ball python breeder in the area, or the best ball python morph, or the brightest yellow,
Yeah,
or whatever it is. And you could have, my God, you could have one of those almost every weekend.
yeah. Hmm.
If you just flip through the different things, I'd bring the birds in and like have a talent show with the
Yeah,
birds
yeah.
and just
Most words spoken, like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Or the best dance, get the cockatoos,
Hmm.
cockatoos moving and put some music on and have a little cockatoo party, just like you do with your guy with the pug party,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Have a cockatoo party, have a whatever.
Such a great idea. People, especially when you say like, anybody that's this specific person, that's like the most potent marketing, right? It's like you're
Yep.
you're
The
drilling down
more
into
narrowed
your
in you can get. Yeah.
yes. It's like you don't get any more specific ideal client than do you own this species of animal? It's like, oh,
Right.
that's me. I own a
Yeah.
cockatoo. Like this is my event. That's why that pug party works so well. I think realistically they spent like less than $100 on advertising for that, and I think there were 30 plus pug owners there. And I was actually on vacation when that was going on, and they called me like, there are too many pugs in our store right now, and I heard them all in the background like barking, and it's like that is potent marketing. It's like talk
Yes.
to a very specific person, give them exactly what they want or something they didn't even know they wanted, right? Like I'd never heard of a pug party before. That was like a, that not maybe not a completely original idea, but most of those people had probably never heard of that before. And it's like, give them something that they don't even know that they want, make it exactly for them, and you'll bring a bunch of people out.
In our rabbit toy business, I always called it affinity. People have an affinity for things that they're already interested in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have an affinity towards goldfish. If I'm flipping around, I see a goldfish, I see it,
Yep.
right? My brain is already pre-wired to notice that thing. So very early Facebook days, the whole layout of a Facebook page was different. And what we did is we made sure we always used in our profile pic a rabbit with upright ears. Because when they were scrolling through, and they saw rabbit ears set up. If you own a rabbit, you can't not see the rabbit. You can't not see the rabbit. But if the ears were down, it would look too much like a dog or a guinea pig or something else, like
Yeah, you just
corner of your
scroll
eye.
right by. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the emails, we make sure it's in the subject line of every email that we send. We put the word rabbit, because if you are passionate about rabbits and you support rabbit rescues and you campaign that, you know, rabbits need to be treated exactly like dogs and cats, and you wear rabbit socks and you wear a rabbit cardigan and you have rabbit pictures all over your house, that's my ideal client. And so if they're scrolling through Facebook and they see a rabbit, they're going to stop and pay attention, and they're going to say, this is exactly for me. And that's why we changed our business direction. We used to sell to a little bit of everybody. Oh, this is good for gerbils, guinea pigs, not great for guinea pigs, but chinchillas, dagoos. We always put dagoos on the list because dagoos loved our toys, but probably 90% of the people listening to this have no
Yeah, they
idea
like Daegu. Yeah.
what the heck is a dago. They loved our toys. They were big chewers. Small version of chinchilla. Think of it that way. I bet 50% of the people listening don't know what a chinchilla is. Look
A
it up,
chinchilla
guys.
is like a floofy. Yeah, yeah. We can do it. We can do
Fluffy gerbil.
analogy. Yes, yeah. We can do
Yes,
so many analogies. What's a gerbil? Well, it's kind of like a
it's a more spastic hamster with a long
yeah with a longer tail. Yeah.
and you should know what a hamster is. So
Yes.
we've made it all the way back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you know, when you're talking directly to that customer, when we said we sold a little bit of everything, whether you have a bird, a guinea pig, a hamster, a rabbit, then they never really felt it was for them, and the imagery of the business never fit their affinity. But the second we narrowed it down to we sell rabbit toys and all the imagery is exactly who they identify as a person. The words were who they identify as. And I use words like binky, like this make your rabbit binky. Well, that's an inside term for the rabbit people. And they're like, this is for me. You know, this is exactly for me. And that's the easiest marketing to do. It's just the easiest, like you said, with the pug party. And everybody listening to this, you don't have to have an animal to have an affinity, right? You got to find that connection that you have with your customers where they, and sometimes it's just the location you live. If I see the word Sandusky, because I'm from Sandusky, I can't not see that word if I'm scrolling through Facebook.
Yep.
You know, finding those things that people attach to and as part of my last name, right? Anytime I see Thompson, anytime I see Ali or Allison, I pay attention because I'm like, that's part of me. That's kind of how I identify as a person. And that's why, you know, sending emails with their name in the subject line works so well. Because they're like, that's me. Yeah.
That's why those ridiculous Facebook ads work, where it's like a clearly like an auto-generated, AI-generated shirt that's like, you know, my name's Duncan and I was born in Massachusetts. And like, if your name's Duncan and you were born in Massachusetts, you're gonna love this shirt. It's like, oh geez, you know,
I think
it's like
really great. My sister's about to turn 50, and so she's been getting a lot of ads about like turning 50 and how 50 is the new 30, and so she's been sharing those on Facebook, and I'm like, they've got you so locked in, they
figured out. Yep. It's like all of the it's like a lot of just psychology, right? Like you're just tapping into things that work and figuring out at what level it will work and how you can make it work for your business. And every, like you said, you don't have to have a pet store. Your ideal client doesn't have to own a specific animal. Everybody has an affinity. You can tap into affinity in any aspect of your marketing for sure.
Yeah, I know that our friend Ryan, he sells, he's in England, so they sell something that we don't have here. It's like bedding something. It's something with bedding. But he knows that a lot of his clients are just really big, like Harry Potter nerds and Star Wars nerds. And so even though what he's selling doesn't have anything to do with that, he uses those words in his marketing because he knows that they're going to lean into it and be like, just like when Luke found out Darth was his father, you know, like he's using these analogies and stuff that are analogies that they really lean into because that's them. And they're like, I'm a Star Wars person. Like, I know exactly what he's talking about. This is amazing. And they're more likely to buy just because they feel seen and understood. And I know as an animal person, that's all I need. That's all I wanted. Like, I want somebody to see me and understand me and not feel like I'm the crazy one here.
Yeah, you're like immediately like, I'm in. Yeah, like you.
Yes.
Oh, you think the same way as me? Let's be best friends. Like,
Exactly. So that's why Duncan immediately became my best friend. It
yeah,
was not,
yeah,
it was marketing and animals. And I'm like, this is amazing.
yeah, yeah.
I've got somebody on both sides of it. And my friend Claude, I've talked about several times, he likes reptiles. He's had like bearded dragons and stuff
Nice.
like that.
Yeah,
So there might be like a connection with marketing and animals and stuff. I know there's a connection. I've always seen like marketing and people that are into comic books.
yeah.
I see that a lot. Like they tend to be a very similar crowd, and also magic,
Mm.
not Magic the Gathering, but like
Yeah,
magicians.
magic tricks. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, magic tricks and things like that. I see that commonality amongst a lot of marketers as well.
Sure.
But anyhow, so that's what I would do even with the events. Every event is a social media opportunity, both live streaming the event, taking short videos, interviewing people, having them hold up their snake and tell us all about this is butterscotch and
Hmm.
butterscotch I got when she was just hatched out and whatever it was, and tell their stories, because that's the other thing animal people love to do is tell how unique and precious and what a snowflake their own animal is, that
Correct.
it's unlike any other animal you've ever seen before. This is a snake that thinks she's a lizard, just things like that. So let them tell their stories. Posts, reels, YouTube channel for sure. It has to have a YouTube channel. We can definitely build the education into it as well, which is what I love about snake discovery. We sit there and we're like, looking at the animals, but at the same time, we're learning about making sure turtles are put on the side of the road that they were walking towards and not on the opposite side, because then they're just going to try to cross again because they were going
Yep.
that way for a reason.
Yep.
You get to learn things and be entertained at the same time. So yeah, that's what I would do. Obviously, email lists segmented towards what kind of animals that they have, so we can let them know whatever deals, sales, etc.
Yep.
I love the idea of even bringing in reps and talking about different products that their company has, possibly even doing videos with them. I don't know, like maybe that's like a membership thing where they can, learn more about the products. But I think super niche, crazy animals without being unethical, and super niche products for those animals that you can't buy just anywhere. People go to parrot shows because they can't find the good big bird toys. They can't
Yeah.
find the good big bird cages. Um, there's a lot of things that if you don't know, like there's giant guinea pig cages that you can't buy at the pet store, but if you know what you're looking for, you can find it online.
Yeah.
And not that I want to sell guinea pigs, but that's an example of like the people that are in the know.
Yep.
The new people don't necessarily know that that's a thing
And
until
that's
they
who the
get to.
education's for. Yeah.
Right. And then say, hey, look, this is like the proper way to house your XYZ. I would love to see one thing that we want to do for Clary's bearded dragon, because he's still in a 40-gallon. I'd like to get him in something bigger.
Sure.
But they have like those bearded dragon, like a not a glass aquarium, but like a cage, but like a multi-layered cage. I never see those at pet stores. I can find them online, but now I'm not touching it. I don't know how big it is for my space. I'd love to have something like that at a pet store.
Yeah, there's a really great exotic store. I'll send you their information after we get off this podcast here. But we're really like describing their kind of their mentality when it comes to the things that they actually have in the store. They have all the really niche stuff. They have everything that everything could want to eat. They have their rats, mice for the snakes. They have all the bugs that you could want for the lizards and the spiders, and all the enclosures that you could want, and all of the, not just the enclosures, but like the next step up, which is like, here you can keep him in a cage with like the regular bedding, or you could keep him in a cage that has live plants in it with like the light on it that grows the
Yes.
plants, and they have all that stuff too. So
To
it's
the
like,
next
okay,
level.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, like we have everything that you need to get into it, and then when you're ready, we have like this next step up. So I love that. And like I'm a nerd, right? So like I go down the rabbit hole and go all the way to the end and figure out where it goes. And like there are tons of people out there like that, and having the products to supply that market is a great business for sure.
Yeah, how do you replicate this animal's natural habitat
Yeah.
to the closest available so you feel like, with your little poison dart frogs, that you are looking into the Amazon and seeing these animals live in their natural habitat?
Yes.
You've got a piece of that in your own home.
Yeah, and you could do like even there's a world in which you could do like 5-day challenges or like 30-day
Yes.
challenges where it's like we're gonna walk you through in this email series or this video series how to build your enclosure to look like this one, like follow along enclosure builds or whatever, and you could even do it where they get the enclosure and the stuff first and build it out and then come and get the animals, which in my opinion is the right way to do it, right? Like you need
I
to
think
have
so.
the environment first and make it and get it set. And if you're going to do the plants, you want to give them time to kind of grow in and like see which ones are going to make it and which ones aren't. And you could walk them through that whole thing and then be like, now we just got in all the poison dart frogs. Come down to the store. This is our like launch date for our poison dart frogs.
I can do you one better on that.
Let's go.
You have them go through 30 days. You've got 30 days. All right, ready, set, go. We're going to do poison dart frog enclosures.
Yep.
And we've got all the supplies here. We just ordered in like 50 of this specialty tank. We've got all the plants, everything. You come down and buy it. They come down and buy it. They take it home. They've got 30 days. At the end of 30 days, they need to come in with a picture of their completed vivarium. And they enter in to win a free poison dart frog.
Ooh,
so if they come in
awesome.
and show that they did it, they have the opportunity to actually win. And maybe we pick 3 winners. So many people are going to win a free poison dart frog, but you don't just have one poison dart frog. And it's like, who does that? So you got to get the other ones. You got to get the other ones. And then if anybody who didn't win is going to still need their poison dart frogs, but you can have this fun interactive way of there's a chance that you could win. If you already wanted it, you already wanted the poison dart frogs. So let's do it together. Let's do it together as a community. We'll create a little Facebook group where everybody can share their progress and show us and ask questions and do all of that fun stuff. And maybe we'll have a meetup somewhere around the midpoint where everybody can come in and talk about what they're doing. But then at the end, we're going to give away. I don't know how much poison dart frogs are. Like I've not actually.
Yeah, $50 to $300 depends.
I was going to say like 75 plus, but yeah, 50 plus. So it's a decent prize.
Yep.
That you can get a little frog for free, which means you can buy a second little frog for your tank, and then everybody else are just straight up buying poison dart frogs left and right because they have the vivariums for them now.
Yeah, great idea. I love the follow along challenge plus giveaway. It's like, how do you we have all these tactics and things in our toolkit. And that's been one of the most fun things doing this podcast is like figuring out how to apply a lot of the same things to different businesses. Like, how do you run a giveaway for a pet store? How do you run a giveaway for a financial advisor? It's like not everything works for everybody, but figuring out how to not only how to apply the tactic that we have to a different business, but combining them to make like a more cohesive thing, right? So we got all the social media for this. We got the challenge, which we both experienced in different ways, and then we have the giveaway on top of that, which is just like, talk about the most fun pet store that you've ever been to, right?
Yes.
So, I've never been to a store that's done anything like that before. And if you're taking a hobby or a business that's already kind of fun and layering that fun on top of it, it's just like, you're going to have to keep people away. You're going to be full for your events. People will be knocking down the door to get in because it'll be the place to be. So.
Dan Kennedy used to always say, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And when you do really great marketing in a world where great marketing is non-existent, you don't even have to be that good.
Yep.
You just have to put forth some effort and be intentional, right? So it doesn't just happen because everybody else is just letting it happen. But if you're intentional and you take some of these fantastic direct response marketing tactics that we've learned, that both in print, we haven't even gotten to printed newsletters and direct mail and all of that fantastic stuff. Like, imagine a printed newsletter for a pet store would be fantastic. Taking that to an industry that just has no
Ali.
knowledge of it, and the consumers haven't seen anything like that before either. and you just can't help
I
but be
think my
successful.
internet's
When you
good
have a
still.
fun business, a fun, interactive, engaging business, you cannot help but be successful. You are frozen and gone.
Oh, cancel. Am I back?
Ah, you're there. Good.
Oh man, what a pain.
I was about to hit that button.
Don't hit it. Yeah, they're up there. I can hear them like drilling and throwing crap off the roof and stuff. Like it's loud. Um, but it also could be my VPN. Occasionally, it kicks me out because whatever IP address I'm routed through, like their internet drops. So
Okay. All right.
pet
So I
stores.
just said like some amazing stuff about the bringing marketing strategies that are not normally seen in that industry to that industry and just killing it, because if you layer fun and engagement and interaction, which engagement interaction, when you layer those things together, you almost can't help but have a successful business.
Yep, and that is exactly right. And I've seen it over and over again with just like just a little bit of effort, a little bit of intentionality. Like you said, you have to be intentional about it, and just like a little bit of skill can really set you apart. You know, even from large, especially I would say from like large corporations that have the budget, you would think that they would be the ones that know, but oftentimes it's like opposite, right? Like the scrappy small businesses that have to figure it out or die are the ones that get it, right? Like they take some time, but a lot of those are the ones that really figure it out and build these really cool niche businesses with really like cult like followings. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in. Let's buy that pet store.
Let's do it. And that's where I hear people say, the big box stores drive everybody out. The big box stores are going to they absorbed us when we were, the small store in Sandusky where I was from, because we were basically them. We didn't niche down. We didn't have anything fun and exciting and different to offer. And ultimately in the war of competition, we weren't equipped, right? But I think that the big box stores should be scared of a small business with good ideas. Not that it's going to put them out of business, but it's going to put a dent in their business if you can create something that again is fun and engaging. that there's no way. They're the big Titanic that can't turn away from the iceberg, and we're a little tiny speedboat where we can do things and maneuver around and create opportunities that they could never. They'd have to go through 16 layers of management before they could even get a okay, we'll study it,
At
right?
least. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're kind of like relegated to bland and boring and corporate, and they can't break out of that. It's a tremendous competitive disadvantage that they have. Everybody looks at their advantages with the money, but they have a lot of disadvantages as well. And if you're a small business that's like, oh no, Walmart or Petco or whatever big box store is going to put me out of business, there are tremendous advantages that they could never compete with you on. You just got to be really good at communicating them. You've got to have communication with your customers. You've got to build those relations. They could never build a relationship the way a small shop can. They can never do it. They can never give you the kind of service that a small shop can. And they can never provide the kinds of animals our small shop can, right?
Yep.
They could never offer that. They're at a tremendous disadvantage. I feel bad for them. I mean, they should be so scared because our pet store is going to kick their pet store's butt. But yes, I would love to buy a pet store. It is probably one of the things that could be tempting enough for me to draw me into a retail shop. Like I really want a frozen yogurt shop. And the only reason I wouldn't is because I know the time that it would involve, getting the right people and doing everything exactly right, keeping things clean, keeping things above board.
Very
And
operationally heavy. Yeah.
yes. It's not an easy business where you can just set up a teenager and move along. Although they did that with me. They were like, they hired me when I was 16 and they're like, yeah, we've seen you shop in here a bunch. So you seem to know about animals. You're hired. Like that was my interview.
Yeah.
And and then they're like, okay, you're running the store for the night. Once
Yeah.
they taught me how to count money,
Pretty
they were
much
like,
me too. Yeah, pretty much me too. It was like they saw that I wasn't good at selling puppies or that I didn't want to, and they were like, "You know stuff about snakes, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love snakes." And they were like, "Okay, so you know fish too, right?" And I was like, "I've never had a fish tank in my life." And they're like, "No, you can figure it out. You can figure it out." And they gave me a manual like this thick of like corporate how to run a fish department. And they were like,
oh
"You're
my
the manager." And I was like, "What?" So that was
I
my
was always
introduction.
afraid I didn't know enough. I was
Yeah.
always afraid of like, am I going to give this person bad advice?
Mm,
Am I going to totally like ruin their tank, especially with the fish tank stuff?
yeah.
But I put my nose to the books and I'm like, I'm going to learn it. This is
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like in the beginning, I really didn't know, but I leaned pretty heavily on my suppliers. I would say like, "Hey, I'm having this issue over here in this tank. Can you give me any advice?" And they're like, "Yeah, let's test the water and like let's see what's going on." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I got a really good education just by asking what would be considered dumb questions. And I think that that in and of itself is a really good lesson in business and life in general. Is like there there are such a thing as dumb questions, in my opinion, but
Mhm.
they're the most important ones to ask because it's like everyone thinks that they seem dumb for asking them, but in reality, you would be dumb not to. It's like
Right.
you won't figure it out if you don't ask or if you're
Yeah,
not interested or
exactly.
curious. So ask the dumb questions. That's like the motto that I live by. So
I went around and I created cards for each of our tank and I created a color system for each of our fish of which ones were aggressive, which ones were good community fish. And like I just studied and worked on all of that stuff. I was into it. I was like, I've got to know it. But you're right. There's like and a lot of people will jump into a hobby not knowing what they don't know, thinking that they know.
yeah.
I bought my aunt a beta when I was young because she already had a beta in her tank, so I knew it would get along with the other beta.
Oh no.
She's like, yeah, that one died.
Hmm.
And I learned it later. I was like, oh, they're not supposed to. So my opinion, my thought was, she already has one. It'd
Yeah,
get along
of course they're
great.
gonna get along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gonna get along. They're the same. They're the same species. Why wouldn't they get along?
Yeah, the
Uh,
fish biology stuff, like I was really into as well. That's what I was always interested in was just like how, which ones were aggressive, which ones weren't, like where do they live, what kind of food do they want to eat. When it came to like the chemistry side of things, that was my like trial by fire. I didn't
Yeah,
know
that
anything
was
about it.
me too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I definitely like behavior and all of that much better than like, I don't know, we're testing this stuff. Just have an under gravel filter so that you've got a biological filter going on there so we don't have to worry about any
Yeah,
of this.
yeah.
Let the lab do it.
I got really lucky that I figured it out pretty quick. And then after I was not at that job anymore, I worked at a different fish store that was like just fish. And he's the guy that runs that store is like one of the smartest fish guys in the area. Like really just knows his stuff. And I got a really good education on everything from him. So I became a lot better at that side of it. And you have to have it when you have only fish, because
Mhm,
if that's like your whole thing, right? Like if
mhm.
you lose a tank of fish, that could represent thousands and thousands of dollars in revenue.
And when a customer
Um,
comes in and they know more than you, that can be
a
very
problem. Yeah.
disconcerting for the customer and embarrassing for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a fascinating industry, and like people are very almost like gatekeepery there. So you really
Mhm.
do have to have that level of knowledge that they're coming to you wanting to learn because you're the one that knows. And you have to be willing to share that knowledge, right? I've run into that too, where it's the opposite, where we know and we're not going to tell everybody that comes in unless they're our customer, because they're going over there to buy the cheap thing and then coming to us, like the situation that you mentioned.
Right,
So
right.
that there's got to be like, that can't be, again, the only way that you're differentiating yourself is like by knowing more. You have to niche down. You have to do something cooler, better, more fun, more interesting than the big box stores, or that's what's going to happen. They're going to shop everywhere
And
else
I
and
would
come to you for info.
definitely have an approach that's like an everybody welcome. We're going to do education events. We're going to bring you in so you know exactly what you need and what you don't need. And then I would just sell supplies the other box store doesn't have, to be like, oh, no, no, you don't want a marine land filter. You need a fluval filter. And they don't have fluval filters over there. And if you're buying anything other than a fluval, then what are you even doing? You're killing your
Yeah,
fish.
yeah.
Buy this.
Bush League, baby. You better
Exactly.
buy Fluval. Yeah.
I don't know. There's stuff better than Fluval now, but like when I was in the pet store, in like Fluval was it.
Fluval's good. Yeah.
Fluval was you're actually serious about your fish tank.
Yeah, we
Marine
could
land
do a
was
whole other podcast on just like fish tank supplies if you want.
oh yes.
That'd be a fun one. Yeah.
I've been out of the game I think too long. I would not have enough knowledge
Mm.
going into that one.
Time for a goldfish tank.
I know, no. I can't travel and have a goldfish tank. That's the thing.
Sure.
I could have a little green cheek conure and travel though.
Good idea.
Tempting, or a golden conure. So like golden conures are all over the place now. And again, when I was into parrots, you couldn't buy them because they were protected.
Hmm.
Now you can get a golden conure. Very, very tempting. Not going to do it, but I'm
You
tempted.
should. I'm a
No,
horrible influence. Yeah.
oh, I need to travel. I need to be footloose and fancy free, and no pets and no kids at least for a while.
Yeah. Mm.
Then we can talk about a goldfish tank. All right, Duncan, this was fantastic. I had a great time. I know it's a little fan servicey for us to do a pet store because I'm like, I know Duncan's going to love this and I'm going to love it. We're going to have a fantastic conversation. Whether anybody else cares about a pet store or not, we're geeking out on it. So I'm happy enough about that.
Yeah, and
But
it's
yeah,
our show. So who
yeah,
cares what
no,
anybody
we can
else
do whatever we
wants?
want to.
Yeah.
But it was totally fun talking to you about it because, again, it's something I don't really get to talk about in my everyday life. So, kind of talking about different experiences. And I love how, like, on point we both were for the type of pet store that we would do. We didn't have a lot of deviations there. And that makes me happy. I don't know
Yeah.
why, but it
Yeah.
just makes
Yeah.
me happy. So, we're going to wrap it up there then. And, I want to ask everybody, no matter what business you're in, what can you take from this podcast episode and apply it to your business? We talked about events. We talked about community building. We talked about affinity. We talked about standing out from a big box store. What can you do? What can you take from this episode and actually differentiate your business from your competitors? So that you're almost feeling sorry for them because they just don't have the competitive advantages that you have. I would love to hear what you got out of this. or ideas that you would have for a pet store, because who knows, there might be something massive that we're missing here. And then next week, we're going to come back with a boring business. We got to have a lot of fun with the pet store, but then we got to get serious and run a real, like, boring business. But our boring business episodes have tended to be our most interesting. And so I'm excited to see whatever Duncan brings to the table on that, and see if we can spice it up and make it less boring.
I'm really excited for that because it is ultra boring. I tried to pick like pretty bottom of the barrel, most boring business I could think of, and I think I nailed it. So
Okay, I'm excited. We're going to do that next week. In the meantime, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.
bye.
Bye.